Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have David Bo- Dowlen, relationship and personal development coach, a speaker, and also a podcaster. Welcome to the show, Brent.
Thank you, AJ. Appreciate it.
You are welcome to the show. You are welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are talking about. We'll be talking about living life to your fullest potential. So, Brent, first to talk to you to understand what does this living life to the fullest potential, what is this living life to the fullest potential all about?
Well, living life to the fullest potential. Generally, I talk mostly to men, but my podcast really applies to a lot of men and women most of the time, even though I specifically talk to men. And it's about living life bigger than what we're told to just live life as. A lot of times, especially as men, we get to a certain point and now it's get a job, take care of your family, go to work, provide for them in a financial way, right? And that's kind of where we're told to stop at that point. We're not encouraged to go past that. But I believe that every person has this incredible gift that is unique to them, that's part of who they are. They were born for a purpose. I believe that with all my heart. And so when we talk about living life to your fullest potential, that's what we're focused on, is helping men go past the let's just take care of our families and go about life to let's explore what we can do for the bigger world, for a bigger society, right? What drives us, what pushes us to be better, to show up better, to change the world. What is it in us? What is that purpose we're seeking? And how do we get there?
Right, right. How do we get there? And that is the thing. What should a person, especially from men's perspective, what should they learn? What should they unlearn so that they can reach that destination, so that they become the right kind of model? Should they always win, or should they also have that chance that they can fall and get up? Help us understand in this backdrop, because you have a podcast, great podcast called the Fallible Man Podcast.
I started the Fallible Man podcast to start from that position of humility. I want to be really, really clear with anybody listening. I'm not perfect. I'm not pretending to be perfect. I don't have every answer. I'm on a journey myself, and I'm trying to take men and women with me as I go on this journey, because I know that's why I have guests like you have guests, because there are people who know things or understand things better than I do. But if we start at a place of humility, and humility is one of the big drivers, one of the things I think all of us need to learn, is accepting that we don't have all the answers, that we don't know everything. Because if we start at a place of humility, that lets those failures be wins, right? I fall down all the time. At some point, we learn to get up, usually early in life as kids, right? With little kids, you fall down. And there's a point as a parent, you stop reaching over and picking them up and you start letting them get up on their own, right? They have to learn that. And all of us do. Nobody likes to lose or to fail, but it is the most powerful teacher if you let it be. If you let failure, quote unquote failure, teach you something and come from that place of humility and go, yes, it didn't turn out how I planned, but I got something out of it. I'll do it better next time. I know where I went wrong. I look at that and break it down. Then it's not really a failure. It's a win, right? Thomas Edison is famously misquoted about 1,000 ways to make a light bulb. It's actually, the quote is, I found 1,000 ways not to make a filament light bulb, right? Edison didn't look at it as he wasted his time. He looked at it as, this doesn't work, and I've learned that. Now I'm going to change my approach. I'm going to do this, right? Over and over, and then until he got where he wanted to go. And we all tend to have to go through that approach. I'm a hard head. Like, I take time to learn things. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. And so sometimes I have to go about the hard way, but I get there. And that's where we get into that second thing, which is discipline. You have to have the discipline to keep going. You can't wait for motivation. You can't wait till you're inspired. You have to build that discipline to get up and show up day after day after day. When you're tired, when you're exhausted, when you don't want to get out of bed, you have to build that discipline. And so humility and discipline are a place where we try and start. We also have to come from a place of integrity as men and women. I think integrity is one of the most important traits that a human being can develop. It's better to die standing on your truth than it is to live a lie. It really is. And so we have to come from a place of that integrity where that honesty is, where we choose the right thing because that's who we are. And these things start stacking on each other. And as you develop those three core traits, right? And then we apply that work ethic and that growth mindset of, I'm going to put in the reps. I'm going to do the due diligence. I'm going to go over and over and over again. I'm also a personal trainer. And so a lot of things I think about come from that aspect of my life. I've been training in the gym for a long time. I've been training other people in the gym for a long time. And I know every rep counts. It's not the first rep that makes you strong. It's not the 100th rep that makes you strong. It's the 10,000th rep that makes you strong. So you got to have that work ethic and you got to have the growth mindset, because without it, you're going to give up. You're going to fail.
Right.
You're not going to get stronger. You're not going to keep going, right? Without that discipline, without the growth mindset, so it stacks on itself. One of the key aspects we miss, though, a lot of times, we got to have that belief. People need something bigger than themselves to believe in. And I'm not the one to tell people what they need to believe in, but everybody has to have a bigger vision than themselves, a bigger belief. Life is too big without it. You have to have something to believe in, because there's no way you can just keep going day after day after day if you resolve to just live on your own. You have to have belief in a bigger concept than you.
Right. Right, Brent. So you talk about learn to learn so that you can teach your children. Fine. At the same time, we also learn that let the children learn on their own. Don't push your ideas into their minds. Let them learn, let them live your life. How do you calibrate these two things? Because they will learn the things when their time will come, because that time will be different than our time. So, what should we learn that is only, that is useful to our children in the right manner? Something that they can adapt and adopt, and not something that they will despise.
When I talk about learning to learn, it comes from a place of, like I said, I started for humility. I found out at the age of 40, I knew nothing about finances. Like, I was financially illiterate. At least in the United States schools, we don't teach about finance that much in school. And so at 40, I was flipping through my 401k and I was looking at it for the first time in my life. I actually bothered to look at my 401k. And I found out that I had like $10,000 sitting uninvested from my former company, because I didn't know when it rolled over that I had to go and invest it or just sat there. And I had this epiphany. It's like, what else don't I know? How much better would I have been doing if I had known, right? So I went on a journey of a year just teaching myself finance books, lectures, master classes, anything I could get a hold of to learn all this stuff that I was never taught. And then I started thinking about, well, what will my children's lives look like if I could teach them this stuff, right? So I started this concept of learning to learn, because my children are going to learn a lot of things on their own, but I can make things exciting for them and I can teach them things that actually change lives, right? So I started teaching my kids about finance by making a game out of it. I started paying my kids to read books, age appropriate books, and do book reports on them. They were age appropriate, but they were on finance and marketing and business. So my 9 and 11-year-olds both have investment accounts. And we sit down and we talk about different stocks, and we talk about dividends versus capital gains, right? We talk about the idea of, and I'm going blank here. It's like when artists get paid for a song, right? That gets played over and over again, royalties, right? We
Okay.
started talking about the different kinds of income, things I was never taught. And I started making a game out of these things and making them fun. And so we have these discussions. My 11-year-old has never paid taxes in her life, and she knows she doesn't like them already because she understands the concept, right? But I had to start learning these things so I could teach my children, not in a way where I'm pushing it on them, but when that opportunity opens. We have so many opportunities to teach our kids things because they open those doors all the time. They're so naturally curious, but you have to be armed with the knowledge you need when the opportunity presents, right? This isn't something I just jam down their throat at dinner. This is something when money conveniently comes up, and it comes up a lot when you have kids. You have children? AJ, you got kids? Yeah?
No.
No?
Sorry. Right. Right.
Uh, the subject of money comes up a lot with kids because they're always asking for money. And so I just started equipping myself with answers when they do ask questions, right? And so I started learning other things. I started learning business. I started learning marketing, and I made business a game. I taught my kids how to start a business, right? They've sat with me through the process of actually forming a company, which is tedious, but they've also sat with me and they have their own business. There's an artist website called Redbubble, and you can post your designs onto like clothing and stuff like that and sell it in your own little shop there. And you just get the royalty income from that. So my kids have their own shop on there. So we sat down with graphic design tools that I already have anyways for my business. And I helped them learn to design. And now they're doing artsy stuff, right? They're matching animation styles, they're matching color tones to make it pleasing to the eye to sell these designs. And so right now it's a game. They don't sell very much. They sold some things here and there, right? Usually it's just like family members. But every now and then they make a sale and they're like, oh, someone bought this. This is so cool. And how proud they were to wear their own clothes to school and tell their friends they had a business, right? I take these opportunities when they show up. But for me to do that, I have to educate myself past my comfort zone, past where I normally would be. And so I started learning about all kinds of things that I wasn't necessarily good at.
Right. Right, Brent. So, in terms of, in our society today, in terms of a lot of, you know, there is a dearth of the right sort of role models, and you talk about being a right role model for either for your children or for the society as a whole. And you talk of, especially man, for the men, 7 traits that every man should develop in himself. What are these 7 traits so that people know that they can be right sort of male models, role models in the society that helps in taking the society forward.
Well, we already talked about those some. So we'll go back and hit those, but you need to hit that discipline. Men need to have discipline. It comes out in every aspect of our lives. And we need to have integrity. Somebody's always looking. One of my favorite things to tell guys is little eyes are always watching you. Whether you have children or you don't have children of your own, Little eyes are always watching you. Someone's kids are always paying attention because they're curious. And so you never know who sees you do what. And so you may think that nobody saw something, but that's one of the reasons it's important to live with integrity, because you never know who's actually seeing that. I think we need to develop humility. If I didn't make that clear, it's men need to be able to say, I was wrong. Not because men are wrong all the time, but because we need to be able to give ourselves that leeway to say, you know what, I was wrong. And for that not to be an embarrassment, for that not to be something that takes us down a notch, but because we're secure in who we are. I confuse people all the time because I say humility actually comes from a place of strength. Humility is not weakness. Humility comes from a place of strength. It comes from a confidence in who you are, a security in who you are. That's what allows you to be humble, to say, hey, I was wrong. Oops, I made a mistake. I did it wrong. Because you're secure enough in who you are and where you stand that it's okay to be wrong, right? It's okay to ease off a little bit and not be the loudest guy or the biggest guy or the most correct guy or whatever. I think we need to, as men, develop a work ethic as a trait. Men were built for labor. We were labor of all kinds. There's a biological difference between men and women. Our shoulders were built broader and stronger to carry more burden and to carry more weight. And that may look different for some guys. Some guys that's physical labor. Some guys that's emotional. Some guys that's, being able to do those long hours in the office, right? We know just from public record, men tend to work longer hours than women, even in the same jobs. We were just built for work. So we got to develop that work ethic and really pride ourselves in that. Not to a fault, not to a point where we become workaholics and that's all we ever do, but to the point where we can carry that burden and shoulder it, because that's going to be required of the next generation too. That's not going to change in thousands of years of existence. That hasn't changed in humankind. Then we got to get into that growth mindset, the idea that we can always learn, the idea that there's always more to learn, that there's always a way to learn, and there's always something for us to learn, and that we can actually do it. That's what I find with a lot of men is they have this limiting self-belief of, oh, well, I'm not really that smart. Yes, you are. You are highly intelligent, whether you give yourself the credit or not. You're highly intelligent. You absolutely can learn. You can always learn, and you should be learning every single day and embracing that. And so we need to have a belief, a core belief that drives us. And that may be a spiritual belief, that may be a personal belief, but we have to have a belief in something more that drives us. And then that seventh trait is one that some people wouldn't see as a trait. I think men need to develop their physical health. We were built to be physical. I know some guys who are a lot smaller than me. They're still built to be physical. At my conference, we have a strongman event. I throw a yearly conference called the Phoenix Men's Conference, and we actually have a novice strongman event. And we had all these guys competing last year. And this one dude, he was shorter than everybody, built very wiry, very thin, right? I was so nervous. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna get sued, because I was watching this guy try and flip this tire that weighed probably 3 times his body weight or more. And I'm watching his body. I was like, oh my goodness, he's gonna break his back or something. It just terrified me. But he couldn't flip the tire, but man, he was gonna die on that hill trying. I finally had to I'm like, okay, you're done. Like, take a break, man, you're done. Every man ought to develop his physical health to a premium at least once in his life. Once in your life, you need to find out. I want to say I always credit this wrong, so you guys double check me on this. But I want to say it was either Socrates or one of the other Greek philosophers said that every man owes it to himself one time in his life to see what he is physically capable of, right? To see his physical best. As guys, it's really easy to get lazy sometimes because we start doing that 9 to 5 job or whatever hours you work. I spent 10 years at a desk and my health just went downhill so bad. I started getting heavier, started breathing harder, right? Because I spent 10 years behind a computer desk. And we all owe it to ourselves as men to find out what we can do at least once in our lives. Take our body for a spin. I think those are the 7 traits that men really, if you can dig into all those things and show up your best in all those things, and it sounds like a lot, but they build on each other. But if you can show up your best in all those areas, then when people are watching, whether it's a child or another person, you're going to inspire them. You're going to encourage them. You're going to move mountains for them. You may never even know it.
Wonderful, wonderful, great points indeed, Brent. And I'm sure a lot of people will be able to follow them if they want to become the right sort of role model. But there is so much to learn, and I have one podcast. This is one episode. You have got many episodes around this in your Fallible Man podcast, so that So tell us about it, so that people can learn from there too, if they want to. And also, you have got the men's conference. You have got Phoenix conference. Tell us about that, so that people can engage more with you and learn so much more from you.
Okay, thank you. So I have the Fallible Man podcast, and we've been going now we're in season 4. We started in 2020, and we are going now towards the latter half of season 4. And we do 2 shows a week. We have a guest episode that comes out every Wednesday. And I find guests like yourself, men who have something to share, women who have something to share. But we cover a broad spectrum. In fact, I was told I was way too broad at one point in my podcast would never succeed because I covered too much. But men and women aren't, single dimensional beings, right? One thing doesn't quantify you. It doesn't quantify me. And so we talk about the broad spectrum of being a man. We talk about masculinity, but we also talk about entrepreneurship. We talk about morning routines. I've had dating coaches. I've had intimacy experts. I've had so many entrepreneurs. I've had authors, communication experts. We talk about every aspect of living life as a man. Like I said, I have a lot of female listeners too. My main audience is men, but I have a lot of female listeners as well. We talk about all the depth because being a person is complicated and it has a lot of facets to it. So we cover all of it, and it's crazy. Like, I have some great conversations that come out. We talked about self-mastery last week and had a great conversation there. And then on Fridays, I do a shorter show, and it's a solo episode. I started out as a solo podcaster. It was just me, no interviews when I first started. And then I started doing every other episode because I had one of my listeners be like, hey, too many guests, man. I started listening to this because I was listening to you. I was like, wow, thank you. Okay. So now I do 2 episodes a week, and I have one that's a guest podcast and then one that's a solo episode. We try and do 10 to 15 minutes max on those because my guest episodes are usually about an hour. But we try and do 10 to 15 minutes max, sometimes 8. And it's just a quick punch list of, let's try this. Hey, here's the concept. The episode coming out this week is talking about the Einstein box. It's a very simple decision-making paradigm, but I share things like that. My last episode was about parenting skills, right? Here's a couple notes for parenting. And then I actually have another podcast called the Read Me a Story Dad podcast. And that is just men reading to children. That's all it is. There's no advertising. There's no marketing. There's no sales. It's just men reading storybooks to children because I believe there's a need for that in the world. And then I have the Phoenix Men's Conference. We're actually gearing up right now. I just locked in my last speaker for the 2024 event that happens in February every year. And it's a live event right here in Central Washington where we get together and I bring in keynote speakers from around the world. And this year we're focusing on change because, let's face it, Resilience is a necessity at this point in life, and change is constant. And a lot of people don't like change. I don't like change. I'm not supposed to admit that as a coach, but I don't like change. I like my boring, regular, consistent life. But we're going to talk about resilience this year with several keynote speakers. I've actually cut it down from 8 to 6 this year because it was just a little much. And then we have fun. We have meals together. We have breakout sessions together. We have a competition. Like I said, we had a strongman competition, but we're all over it, man. It's everything we can do.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, how do people now connect with you to learn more? And for those who want to, engage with you in a professional capacity?
Well, I'm on every social media platform as @thefallibleman is my top handle, except on Facebook, where I messed that up because I knew nothing about Facebook when I started this. And so I'm @fallibleman there. Or they can find me under David Dowlen pretty much on Facebook and LinkedIn. But you can go to my website, www.thefallibleman.com. We have a big website. I also have thefalliblemanpodcast.com that is a separate website just for my podcast. But I have, if you go to thefallibleman.com or thefalliblemanpodcast.com, there's newsletters you can sign up for. I have a bi-weekly newsletter where we cover a little more about what we're doing. Or I have a weekly podcast email that I send out just for the podcast, because I know not everybody has time to listen to every episode. So I have a weekly email where people can sign up, and it's just a brief, hey, here's what this episode was about this week. Here's what this episode was about. Here's who my guest was. So then you can look at that and go, oh, you know what? I do want to listen to that episode, right? Because not everybody can listen to 2 episodes a week. So
Wonderful, wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.